It was quiet at the top of Thomas's branch line. The yard foreman was talking to Thomas and his crew. "It's supposed to be very good," the foreman was saying. "This batch of coal, you see, burns well enough, so I've heard." "Well, it really should be good," said Thomas. "Without our coal, this island would ground to a halt, and make no mistake."
"My driver says there are some engines that run on wood,"
Percy politely put in
some countries where coal can't be found."
Toby shuddered. "They wouldn't. Surely they wouldn't." Thomas scoffed. "Of course they wouldn't, Toby. Besides, the Fat Controller wouldn't allow it. And anyway, imagine us running on wood instead of coal. We'd never keep to time, and then what would our branch line become?"
"I'm sure Annie and Clarabelle would appreciate a slower ride,"
teased Percy.
"That would be one good thing."
Thomas gave Percy a snide glare. "Yes, there's no doubt about it. Coal is the only way to run a railway, Percy." Percy rolled his eyes, and Toby breathed a sigh of relief. That evening, Duck brought the new batch of coal to Ffarquhar. "This does make a change from ballast," he said to himself. Thomas had the first train that morning, which made him the first to test it out. He hurried along the valley. Come along, come along. There's no need to rush, Thomas. We're making good time." Thomas was usually careful, but today would be different. Percy was making his way down with a goods train.
"What a blaze!"
exclaimed Percy when he noticed smoke coming from the bushes. His crew knew just what to do. The fireman grabbed his shovel and he smacked the bush vigorously until the smoke faded into nothing. "It was good we passed when we did," said his driver, mopping his face. "I'm sure the fire brigade have bigger problems to worry about." But Percy was cross.
"That fire was probably Thomas's fault. So much for keeping the railway running on time. For himself, maybe, but not for everyone else."
"Now, Percy," his driver consoled. "I'm sure Thomas didn't mean to start it now, did he?" Percy was not convinced. Percy's driver told the harbour master when they arrived, and even though he was very understanding, Percy's mood had been fouled by Thomas's mishap. Nothing his crew could do would make him better. He was bad-tempered while he shunted at the harbour, and wouldn't whistle to Thomas whenever they passed. Thomas would soon hear why, of course. "Well, how was it my fault?" he muttered gormlessly. Toby thought it was a great joke. "And here was I thinking you and Thomas got on like a house on fire." On one trip to the top station, Percy was running fiercely.
"Temper, temper! Careful, Percy. You might burn someone with that attitude." "Rotten Thomas! Rotten trucks!" Percy muttered.
They passed the road close to the top station. His driver checked him. "Steady now, Percy. The next station isn't far away." Soon afterwards, Thomas was running down the valley with his train. Clarabelle looked ahead. There was a man with his arm raised in the air. "Stop, Thomas! There's an emergency!" The man in question was the station master.
"Percy set off a fire at the lane. Bertie saw it and his driver reported it to me."
"Not another one!" Thomas exclaimed. But he knew his passengers would be safe, and that was the main thing. Eventually, the station master gave the all clear for Thomas to back slowly toward the road. The fire brigade had dealt with the worst of it, and they let Thomas through. Toby, meanwhile, had had a very quiet day, taking the workmen to and from the quarry and shunting in the yard. He was taking on water from the tower when Thomas bustled in with his train. "If you're wondering why I'm late, it's that silly Percy setting off a fire by the road." Another one, Toby whispered to himself. That's concerning. He had not long finished speaking when smoke began emerging from one of the stone-cutting buildings. Goodness gracious! Toby exclaimed. A worker ran over to Toby. We need to extinguish that fire before it spreads to that oil tanker there. Quickly now! Fire buckets are always kept at railway yards and stations in case of an emergency, and Toby's driver fetched a few from across the yard. Before long, the fire had been put out. Luckily, no one was hurt, except for Toby's good mood. At least that fire didn't start over here. I would have only made it worse. When the Fat Controller found out about the fires on Thomas's branch line, he cancelled all trains there for the rest of the day. Unbeknownst to everyone else, someone had seen the smoke from the yard and reported it. The chief was already angry, but even more so when he discovered the fire was already extinguished. 3 fires? In one day? Your steam engines are quickly becoming a major liability. Mr. Chief, if I may. But Toby couldn't. You'll never get this with diesels. If it were up to me, I'd have the 3 of you scrapped on the spot. There will be no need for that, boomed a voice. The engines knew who it belonged to. I'm Sir Chopper Matt. This is my railway, and I do apologise, Mr. Chief, for the trouble my railway has caused you and your men today. That's Station Officer Cross to you. By name and by nature, Thomas said to himself. And anyway, an apology doesn't do as much good, he snapped back. But do amuse me. What have you got to say about these fire hazards, then? My engines are not fire hazards, thundered the Fat Controller. I respect, however, that you and your brigade take these matters very seriously. These fires were caused by the new shipment of coal we have recently had. I have it on good authority that it burns so well, sparks have been coming out of funnels all across the island. The 3 engines were relieved, but confused. It hasn't been just our line, has it? Percy asked meekly. What almost happened on the main line today? James is still denying it was him, but I can assure you I will see what I can do about it. These things take time, of course, but if my engines were to become pyromaniacs, I don't know what I'd do. A fireman found a very singed candle at the bottom of the building. This must be why it happened, Gov. Unattended candles always spell disaster. That's what I wanted to tell you. Station Officer Cross's temper had been eased, but only slightly. Still, 2 out of 3 fires. One more report, Sir Topham, and I will not be so understanding. He left with his crew. The Fat Controller bid farewell to the engines, but not before instructing them to be careful with their speed, for the time being. Well, I said coal makes a railway run on time, but it's supposed to make fires for our fireboxes, not for everyone else, laughed Thomas. Besides, we'd make terrible pyromaniacs, not a hard one. Shut up, Toby, said Percy softly. You'd make a better one in any case, said Thomas to Percy. After all, you blocked off a road.